Over 2,500 years ago, in a small city-state surrounded by mountains and sea, an extraordinary idea took hold: that ordinary citizens could govern themselves. No kings, no permanent rulers, just the voice of the people. This is the story of how democracy was born in ancient Greece and why it still shapes our world today.
A like helps the channel grow. Your subscription helps keep history from being forgotten.
Life before democracy. Before democracy, most Greek city-states were ruled by kings, aristocrats, or powerful tyrants. Athens itself was originally governed by a small group of wealthy aristocratic families. These aristocrats controlled land, wealth, religious authority, and nearly all political power. Ordinary farmers and craftsmen had little influence over laws or major decisions. Debt was a serious problem, with poor citizens sometimes enslaved for failing to repay loans. Growing inequality created rising tension between wealthy elites and struggling common citizens. Some city-states fell under the control of tyrants, individual rulers who seized power by force. Not all tyrants were cruel, but their rule depended entirely on personal power rather than law. This unstable political climate created pressure for meaningful reform across Greek society. Athens, in particular, stood on the edge of potential civil conflict by the early 6th century BC.
Solon's reforms. Around 594 BC, an Athenian statesman named Solon was given authority to address the city's crisis. Solon canceled existing debts and outlawed the practice of enslaving citizens over unpaid loans. He divided Athenian society into 4 classes based on wealth rather than noble birth alone. This shift allowed wealthy non-aristocrats to gain political influence for the first time. Solon created new legal and political institutions, including expanded citizen participation in courts. He established the Council of 400, giving broader representation in political decision-making. Solon's reforms didn't create full democracy, but they significantly reduced aristocratic control. His changes aimed to balance the interests of the wealthy and the common citizens. Despite these reforms, political instability continued in Athens for several more decades. Solon's work laid essential groundwork for the democratic reforms that would soon follow.
The rise of Cleisthenes. Following Solon, Athens experienced further conflict, including a period of tyranny under Pisistratus. After tyranny eventually collapsed, a reformer named Cleisthenes rose to political prominence. In 508 BC, Cleisthenes introduced sweeping reforms considered the true birth of Athenian democracy. He reorganized Athenian society into 10 new tribes, deliberately mixing different regions and social classes. This restructuring weakened old aristocratic loyalties based on family and regional power. Cleisthenes created the Council of 500, chosen through a system incorporating random selection. This council prepared legislation for the citizen assembly, ensuring broader public involvement in lawmaking. He also introduced ostracism, allowing citizens to temporarily exile individuals deemed dangerous to democracy. These reforms significantly expanded political participation among ordinary male Athenian citizens. Cleisthenes' reforms are widely credited as officially establishing Athens as a functioning democracy.
How Athenian democracy actually worked. Athenian democracy operated as a direct democracy, unlike modern representative systems. Citizens themselves voted directly on laws, policies, and major political decisions. The assembly, called the Ekklesia, met regularly and was open to all eligible male citizens. Any citizen could speak, propose legislation, or vote during assembly meetings. The Council of 500 managed daily governmental affairs between assembly meetings. Council members were chosen annually through lottery, not election, to reduce corruption and favoritism. This use of random selection reflected deep distrust of concentrated political power. Public officials served limited terms and were closely monitored to prevent abuse of authority. citizens could bring legal charges against officials suspected of corruption or misconduct. This system prioritized active citizen participation over professional career politicians.
Who could actually participate? Despite its revolutionary nature, Athenian democracy excluded the majority of the city's population. Only free, adult male citizens born to Athenian parents could participate in political life. Women, regardless of wealth or status, were completely excluded from voting or holding office. Enslaved people, who made up a substantial portion of the population, had no political rights whatsoever. Foreign residents, called metics, contributed to the economy but couldn't participate in politics. Citizenship required both parents to be Athenian, following further restrictions introduced by Pericles. Estimates suggest only about 10 to 20% of Athens' total population held citizenship rights. This means true political power rested with a relatively small, privileged segment of society. Modern historians often highlight this contradiction between democratic ideals and exclusionary practice. Understanding these limitations provides important context for evaluating ancient Athenian democracy fairly.
The courts and justice system. Athenian justice relied heavily on citizen participation rather than professional judges or lawyers. Large citizen juries, sometimes numbering in the hundreds, decided legal cases through majority vote. Jurors were selected randomly, again reflecting Athenian suspicion of concentrated authority. Citizens represented themselves in court, though skilled speechwriters sometimes helped prepare arguments. Trials were often public spectacles, blending legal proceedings with civic participation and entertainment. Jury payment was introduced to allow poorer citizens the ability to participate without losing income. This payment system significantly increased broader citizen involvement in the judicial process. Ostracism votes allowed citizens to exile powerful individuals suspected of threatening democratic stability. This unique practice aimed to prevent any single person from gaining excessive political influence. The Athenian legal system reflected democracy's core belief in collective citizen judgment.
Philosophers and critics of democracy. Not everyone in ancient Greece admired or trusted this new democratic experiment. The philosopher Plato was deeply skeptical, fearing democracy could easily descend into mob rule. Plato argued that untrained citizens often made poor political decisions based on emotion. He famously proposed philosopher kings as a more rational alternative to popular rule. Plato's student Aristotle offered a more balanced view, acknowledging democracy's strengths and weaknesses. Aristotle believed democracy worked best when combined with strong laws and civic education. Critics pointed to Athens' execution of the philosopher Socrates as evidence of democracy's potential dangers. Socrates was condemned by a citizen jury, highlighting tensions between free thought and popular judgment. These philosophical debates about democracy's strengths and flaws continue influencing political thought today. Ancient criticism of democracy remains remarkably relevant to modern political discussions.
The legacy of Athenian democracy. Athenian democracy eventually declined following military defeats and political instability. Sparta's victory in the Peloponnesian War significantly weakened Athenian political influence. Despite periods of oligarchy and Macedonian conquest, democratic ideas never fully disappeared. Athenian democracy directly influenced later political philosophy throughout the Roman Republic and beyond. Enlightenment thinkers, centuries later, drew heavily on Greek democratic ideals and institutions. Concepts like citizen participation, legal accountability, and public debate trace directly back to Athens. Modern democratic nations still grapple with balancing majority rule against minority protection, just as Athens did. While flawed and exclusionary, Athenian democracy introduced revolutionary ideas about self-governance.
It proved for the first time that ordinary citizens could successfully govern a complex society. Today's democracies, despite significant differences, remain direct intellectual descendants of this ancient Greek experiment.
From Solon's early reforms to Cleisthenes' revolutionary restructuring, Athens gave the world an idea that would outlive empires, that power belongs, at least in part, to the people. Flawed, limited, and imperfect, yes, but undeniably transformative. If you enjoyed exploring the birth of democracy, subscribe for more fascinating history, and let us know in the comments which ancient idea we should explore next.